Morning, ladies and gentlemen, and we are looking at our current weather situation for today. It looks like we have some severe weather that is in the making for today, mainly through this afternoon and evening, and possibly into some of the overnight hours. Looking at a convection system, the National Weather Service had updated just last night. Yesterday, when I checked this was a 2% marginal risk. Now they have a slight risk that's in the center portion of this. And then you can see this wall of storms that's starting to form, west of Iowa and Minnesota, right there on the western line, coming into this central portion of the country, into Wisconsin, Missouri, Illinois, affecting all these associated areas here. So you can see this line of storms is starting to develop west of that marginal risk zone in the general thunder region right now. So this is a threat that's going to be apparent more in the afternoon to late evening hours. That's probably the peak times of what you're looking at today as far as severe weather possibilities. All hazards are possible, though I don't know too much about how the tornado genesis is going to be. I mean, I would say that we're looking at the possible chance of some spin-up brief tornadoes here and there are not unlikely and can't be ruled out. But the majority of this is going to be high wind gusts and some severe thunderstorms, possible torrential rainfall, and some hail associated with this. Now, this whole 2% marginal risk zone that's on the outside of this is all marked for hail and high winds. So damaging winds are possible, and hail is definitely possible through this entire region. So definitely a weather aware day. Just to be sure, if you lived if you live anywhere in these areas, definitely be on your weather aware game today. Just have your warnings ready. There is a cold front that is pushing behind this frontal system, coming with the westerlies are coming in here. Got some wind that's going up from the southeast that's going into this as well. That might change as we go later into the day. But with these kinds of winds, and then this low pressure system that is right here, and we got this whole thing is on a low pressure system here. So as it pushes in with those veering winds that are kind of coming into it, that it could be possible for some of those things to for this line of storms, as it thins out and gets further to the east, you could have some embedded supercells in there. It can get some things rotating. So that's something to be aware of as it goes later on into the day. So right now you can see it moving kind of northeast right now, but as it continues on and this front pushes it, then you'll see this wide, broad, spectrum line of storms right here. This is going to start to thin out a little bit into more of an isolated squall line of storms, and we're going to check that out in the future probabilities here, looking at what's going to go on through pivotal weather. We can look at the HRR model and see what's going on, as well as some other models to check it out. But anyways, let's go. I gotta go to my thing there. There we go. All right, so this is that 2% marginal risk zone. This is for the tornado threat specifically. This is that area of the highest probability of some brief spin-up tornadoes and some things like that that might be associated to the severe extent in that region, going through Iowa, going through Wisconsin. Um, so if you live in basically in Iowa or Wisconsin, around the Four Corners region, anywhere like that, you definitely want to be on your game today and just have your warnings ready and try to be safe. Looking at the atmospherics, you can see that low pressure system right there with a cold front that's going to be pushing from the west, and as it pushes through, and it's kind of trucking those storms along to the east, and then you get an outflow boundary line that extends south from the low pressure system right there. This whole thing is just kind of making winds kind of veer into this a little bit aloft. Um, Temperatures, you can see that warm sector there as the cold front is pushing through. Then it's got that warm front already in the 70s in some places, high 60s in some places up here. And with the daytime heating, this temperature outlook could change throughout the day, especially out there. So with that daytime heating, it could make for a little bit more instability in the atmosphere. So that would be able to roll out some severe storms and enable that possibility to happen. All right, dew points. We're already looking in the 60s for dew points. So you got that wet sector that's already in this area. A lot of moisture that's lifting up in there, a lot of heat that's moist, that's up in that area there. So that's going to make a little bit for a little bit more instability there in those areas. Now the CAPE levels, surface CAPE levels aren't really that bad yet. We got a couple spots here, about 1,000 CAPE, 1,000 joules of CAPE at surface CAPE levels, but this outlook is probably going to change throughout the day, as it is 7:12 in the morning right now. So it's still cool, it's still early, and that is probably going to change later on the day, and those CAPE levels are probably going to jump up a little bit. And if so, I can do another video today when I do see a difference in this, just to show you guys where we're standing, where we're looking at. All right. So the wind shear, you can see that cold front. That's, this wind shear is just kind of wrapping around that cold front in that low pressure system. It's going to be bolting in here. You're already getting 50, 60 knots of wind shear in some places here. All right, so that's a pretty substantial wind shear. It's definitely enough to get winds going, and it'll enable the severe probability of getting some supercells rotating and things like that, and get some severe thunderstorms developing. And those gusty winds that we have that advisory for, that's going to be, this is going to enable that to be a lot easier to roll out. Surface vortice, it looks like we got a couple of little spots of isolation surface vortice right here. Not too bad, but this is kind of isolated right there, so that's a little bit of a worry, just because it's so isolated. It's just that one individual spot right there of surface vortice. Again, this might change throughout the day. I'll have to keep checking on it and see what happens with it later on in the day, as we are not that close to the event now. It's going to happen, in the afternoon. It's going to start rolling out the thunderstorms. Got some supercell composite here, a little bit developing. Not high indices, just a little bit of low indices right now, but that could boost up a little bit. Tornado parameter is very low right now, so not really a whole worry right there as far as today. But we still got about a whole state before it gets into that region of Iowa and Wisconsin. So by that time, there could be a little bit of significant tornado parameter in there, I'm guessing. Which any parameters on this measurement, any parameters past 1, even 1 or higher, is significant for tornado parameter. That means that the supercell composite is going to be jumped up quite a bit by the time it gets here. You're going to see some dark blue in here, and then also you're going to see some red in here by the time it gets here with tornado parameter. If that's the case, it might not boost up that bad. I don't know what the atmosphere is going to look at, but we're going to check that out in Pivotal Weather here in a minute and see the timeline here. EHI. Now this tells me here that these storms, even right now, they have a little bit of punch, because if there is some helicity that's in this, you see that little orange spot right there, those are higher levels of helicity, which is helicity is that punch that a storm needs to really get the sufficient energy that it needs in order to roll out. You know what I mean? Roll out some severe potential. So you know what I mean? It's early in the morning and we're already getting some helicity on here. So that means that these storms are going to grab, at some energy here, and they're going to pack a little bit of a punch. So that's okay, but it's something to just be weather aware about as it moves in later on during the day. Already getting some low LCL heights here. Lifting condensation around here in the Ohio Valley, it looks like is about 500. You get some 750s and 500s out here to the west in the northwestern corner of Iowa. Moving into that region, going into Wisconsin. So that's that wet sector that you're looking at with those higher temperatures in that region, and that's enabling that lifting condensation to lower up a little bit. Alright, so this is the outlook for today. The National Weather Service rolled out. This is that slight risk there and that marginal risk around it. And for the tornado risk, you can see that little small area of tornado potential that's in that area between a little bit of a spot there of Minnesota that's in there as well, but going halfway through Wisconsin and Iowa. So basically in that whole region right here, that's where you're going to be weather aware for some possible brief spin-up tornadoes and things like that to be rolling out today. Wind, so you can see that 15% slight risk there for the higher winds and that 5% around it. So anywhere in this region right here, you're going to have some strong gusty winds that are going to be coming with those storms, which I know that I've talked about this before in a lot of other videos, but I mean right now this thing looks very spotty and there's a lot of rain in it and everything, and it's really just kind of torn up. But as this front pushes east later on in the day and this becomes more centralized, this becomes more of a straight line kind of storm system, and it kind of thins out and isolates a little bit, you're going to see a much straighter line with this as it comes across. And that's usually what happens when these fronts push them along. And when you get a straighter line of storms like that, where it's a little bit more narrow and thin, that's where you get your bad storms right there. But also ahead of that line, in front of it, anywhere in front of it, usually there's heavier winds attributed with that until the storm passes over. You know what I mean? But right ahead of that line, that's where you're going to get those stronger winds at, because it's just before it comes to your area. So that's where all those really high winds are definitely going to be at there. All right. And then the hail probabilities. Got a 5% risk for this entire region for hail possibilities throughout the day. So, like again, as these storms roll out later in the afternoon to the evening hours is when the highest probability of the severe weather is going to roll out. But anywhere in here, we're looking at anywhere from probably a dime to an inch, you know what I mean, at the max, I would say, if I had to anticipate. But you know what I mean? I'm thinking it's probably not going to be this entire area, you know, getting hit with hail. I think it's going to be individual areas depending on the events that happen with the storm, and the areas that are going to be a little bit more increased than the severe level. That's probably going to be where you're going to have these spotty, isolated areas of some hail dropping down. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. All right. So pivotal weather, let's go and take a look at some models and see if we can look at the timeline a little bit. Seems like we got some frames for HRR. We're going to go to composite reflectivity here. Alright, so you can see those storms already in that region right there. Just kind of widespread right now and broad. Alright, but this is looking at the 10Z hour, so let's go in through the timeline. Now, I can already see that these cells right here, they're real spotty. They're already pretty isolated. And so, as they continue along here, it seems like it gets a little bit more broad, lifting up to the north. And then, you're already starting to see these kind of pop up right here, these little isolated cells. So they're probably going to be building, is what I'm assuming here. It seems like it's going to hang out for a little bit before it rolls into the next frame of, there it is, that's what I was looking for. So it's going to lift up to the northeast, and then you're going to get this line of storms that's going to develop coming out of Kansas right here, and that is going to be the storm in question for today. And you can see how thin that is, that thin line of storms, how thin that is right there. You're getting some isolated cells that are in here. And see how straight that line is? So just ahead of that line right there, that's where you're going to get your severe potential. That's also where you're going to get those higher gusty winds at. And embedded in this line of storms anywhere, there could be some supercells rolling out, also attributed with some hail. So that's where that severe potential is. Usually this kind of stuff, I mean, it typically, on most cases, but not all cases, sometimes you can have some you know, on the front of this line, even at the north side of it, you can have some brief spin-up tornadoes. Usually the worst of it happens at the south end of the line, but it's not in every case. So I'm going to click just ahead of the line of storms, and we are getting that severe potential. You can see significant hail that is put in with this. We got non-supercells, but supercell development is possible anywhere along that line of storms. Look at that moisture going up into the atmosphere. Got a lot of that wet sector that's going up in there. Cap is fairly decent and broken. I mean, it's ready to go. So LCL height and LFC is pretty low, and you're getting a nice stable wind field there. So that's definitely possible for some severe potential in with that. Let's go to the next frame and see what we got. So you can see these cells up here in the north that are building as they go into Wisconsin. and getting a lot of these isolated cells along this line of storms here throughout the day. Let's take a look on the south end of that, just ahead of the line. Getting that marginal severe risk. Still a lot of moisture going up into the atmosphere, and the cap is very broken. And a nice big stable wind field. This lets you know right here ahead of this line you're going to have some higher winds. So definitely have some wind potential anywhere ahead of this line as it continues across. So before it gets to you, prepare for some higher winds that's going to be coming here. All right, as this gets into Wisconsin, at this bigger point, we're getting a little bit of those bigger cells. Let's take a look just ahead of that line. Again, about the same thing. Looks about the same. Not too much hail probabilities, it looks like, in there. But there's a nice big broken cap right there with some moisture going into the atmosphere. A nice stable wind field. So definitely going to have some higher winds attributed with this storm as it continues along. And then it seems like it widens out and gets a little bit more broad and widespread. But let's look in Iowa ahead of the line here. Alright, so now throughout the day, you're going to get that marginal tornado risk, it looks like. Stable wind field, broken cap, a lot of moisture going into the atmosphere. There's a little bit of heat, but it's that time of year where it's getting a little cooler, but you're still going to have that heat from daytime heating. Significant hail that's going up into the atmosphere, that's possible throughout this region here. Supercell development is definitely possible throughout this region as well. Alright, so let's go on to the next frame. Look into Wisconsin. Marginal severe. Not too bad there. Let's go down to Missouri and let's look ahead of this line, see what the atmosphere is doing. So about the same thing, just a different picture. Alright, so I think that the severe, if I had to guess, I think the severe potential as far as tornado probabilities is rather light. I don't think that it's a very serious risk for tornadoes. But I do think that it is a higher risk for some hail possibilities, some definitely heavy rainfall, and some very high winds. So especially, probably not at this point, but even with this, you still have that straight line that's kind of coming with these storms. So anywhere ahead of this line, throughout this entire thing, the winds are going to be a little bit higher. You're going to get those high gusty winds. And then once your area moves into the center of this line, you're going to see those winds start to die down. They might be up and down for a little bit. You know what I mean? You're going to have some moments of of no wind at all, and then it might come with these individualized cells as they move across, where you're going to have some gusty winds, and then it'll die down, and it'll go back up, it'll go down. So it might be an up and down process in some spotty areas here and there, but the fact that some of these cells are very isolated, and you can see these spots that are moving in here, and they're just spotty little cells, that's where you can get the worry. That's where you have the worry for some isolated supercells building right here. You can have some supercell development in that. They could be embedded anywhere really along this line. So you just don't know. But how thin that is, going back in the time frame, how thin that is with those storms right there, that's kind of a worry because of how nice and narrow and and thin that is, with that nice straight line of storms right there. That's usually where you get your highest chance of embedded supercells building in those storms right there, and very, very high winds ahead of the line. So that's the worry for today. As far as I'm concerned here, we got a couple of tropical systems that are also developing out in the Gulf of Mexico. Or I mean, not the Gulf of Mexico, excuse me, the Atlantic. And so I'm watching those developments as we kind of move along. You can see this big low pressure system that's kind of developing out here that the National Weather Service and the National Hurricane Center, I'm sorry, rolled out. 30% chance of tropical storm formation over the next 5 days. Alright, so we'll have to keep an eye on that one. We got some other ones out here in the Pacific that are forming. I know, it looks like a war zone on this radar, but it's not as bad as it looks. But I'm definitely keeping an eye on some weather systems here to make sure that everybody stays safe throughout this kind of portion of the year. So anywhere in this region, I hope you all just keep your warnings on, keep your family safe, batten down the hatches for today, and pay attention to your local weather station and your weather alerts. And I wish you luck, and I hope everybody has a great day. Thanks for watching.